What if I told you that the person you are today is only a tiny shadow of the person you could become in 7 days, and the only thing standing between you and that future is the identity you refuse to let go of? What if the weakness you think is just your personality is actually the cage you built with your own hands? And what if the most dangerous thing about your life right now is how comfortable you've become with being average? Most people wake up every day living the same story, repeating the same thoughts, carrying the same excuses like they're sacred treasures. They say they want to be powerful, unstoppable, unrecognizable, but they cling to the very habits that destroy their potential. They want transformation without disruption, strength without sacrifice, victory without vulnerability. And that's why so many people stay exactly where they are, not because they're incapable, but because they're unwilling. But you're here because something in you is restless. Something in you knows there is more. Something in you is tired of being predictable, tired of explaining your dreams to people who cannot understand, tired of waking up with ambition and going to bed with regret. Something in you is ready to break your own pattern. So let me tell you something powerful a week is enough to change the direction of your entire life. Not to finish the journey, but to become a different person, a stronger person, a disciplined person. A person capable of doing things your old self would never dare to attempt. 7 days is enough to shock your system, enough to build momentum, enough to prove to yourself that your potential isn't just a theory, it's real. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. You cannot become powerful and remain who you are. You cannot become unrecognizable and keep your old habits. You cannot rise while refusing to release what drags you down. Growth demands a trade. Every stronger version of you requires the death of a weaker one. So for the next 7 days, your mission is simple: interrupt your comfort, shock your routine. Challenge every limit your mind whispers to you. You will feel resistance. You will feel discomfort. You will feel the pull of your old identity trying to pull you back into the familiar. And that's exactly how you know you're moving in the right direction. Because transformation doesn't start with motivation. It starts with disruption, and you're about to disrupt everything. You will never become powerful by accident. Power is not something you stumble into. It is something you build through intentional choices, uncomfortable actions, and a relentless commitment doing what most people avoid. The truth is, the world isn't divided by the strong and the weak. It's divided by the disciplined and the distracted, the ones who rise and the ones who repeat. And if you want to become unrecognizable in 7 days, the very first battle you must win is the battle against your own distractions. Every time you reach for your phone before you reach for your purpose, you lose ground. Every time you choose comfort over effort, you reinforce the identity you're trying to escape. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you teach your mind that you cannot be trusted. And power, real power, cannot exist where self-trust is broken. So the transformation begins here with a single promise. A promise that for the next 7 days you will show up. Not halfway, not when it's convenient, not when you feel inspired, but fully, especially when it's hard, especially when you don't want to, especially when your mind starts whispering old lies. Because the moment you act in spite of resistance, you separate yourself from who you used to be. You stop being controlled by impulses and start being driven by intention. And that shift from reaction to direction is the birthplace of strength. But let's be honest, you're not just fighting distractions, you're fighting doubt. The doubt that tells you you've failed too many times, the doubt that says real change is impossible, the doubt that asks, why try again if you'll end up in the same place? Listen carefully, doubt is not a sign you're weak. It's a sign you're standing on the edge of growth. Doubt shows up when you are about to cross a threshold your old self has never walked through before. And the only way to silence it is through action. So for these 7 days, you will not negotiate with your excuses. You will not argue with your fears. You will not wait for motivation to knock on your door. You will move. You will act. You will do the work that your future self will thank you for. And every time you follow through, you're carving a new identity. One choice at a time. Because power doesn't come from who you are. It comes from who you decide to become next. There comes a moment in every transformation when you must face the truth you've avoided for years. You are not defined by your past, but you are shaped by your patterns. And if your patterns stay the same, your future will look exactly like your history. Most people don't lack ambition. They lack interruption. They never pause long enough to question the routines that quietly steal their strength. They wake up the same way, speak the same way, think the same way, and wonder why their life refuses to change. But transformation is never accidental. It demands awareness. So for this week, you must observe yourself like you're studying a stranger. Watch your habits, watch your impulses. Watch where your time goes, where your energy leaks, where your discipline collapses. Don't judge yourself. Just notice. Because you cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. And once you see your patterns clearly, you gain a power most people never experience, the power of choice. You can stop accepting autopilot as destiny. You can rewrite the script instead of repeating it. You can pull yourself out of cycles that have held you hostage for years. But this requires courage, the courage to be brutally honest about what's been holding you back. Maybe it's the way you procrastinate. Maybe it's the people you surround yourself with. Maybe it's the belief that you don't deserve more. Maybe it's the fear that if you try and fail, you'll prove everyone right. Whatever it is, this week demands that you bring it into the light. Because here's the truth: you cannot become unrecognizable while holding on to behaviors that keep you ordinary. You cannot rise while protecting the patterns that pull you down. And you cannot build a powerful identity while living in the comfort of a powerless routine. So today, your task is simple: disrupt one pattern. Just one. Wake up earlier. Say no to one distraction. Break one unhealthy habit. Do one thing your old self would avoid. That single act is not small. It's symbolic. It tells your mind we're not the same anymore. This is how a new identity begins. Not with dramatic declarations, but with small, consistent rebellions against the version of you that no longer serves your future. Each disruption is a vote for the person you want to become. Each disciplined action is a quiet declaration of strength. Each day you choose differently, you step further away from who you were and closer to who you are meant to be. Because change doesn't start with a miracle. It starts with a shift. There is a reason most people never access their true power. They spend their entire lives seeking permission. Permission to start, permission to fail, permission to dream, permission to stand out. They wait for someone to validate their ambition, to endorse their effort, to guarantee their success before they even begin. And in that waiting, they waste years. They shrink their potential to fit the expectations of people who were never meant to shape their destiny. But if you want to become powerful and unrecognizable in 1 week, you must reclaim something you gave away a long time ago: your authority. The authority to decide who you become. The authority to take risks without needing applause. The authority to trust your own judgment, even when no one else sees the vision as clearly as you do. Because the truth is, the world will not believe in you until you believe in yourself first. Confidence is not a personality trait, it is a consequence of action. And power grows when you stop asking this aloud and start saying, "This is mine to build." This week, you must break the habit of waiting. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting for ideal conditions. Stop waiting for someone to tell you you're ready. You are not ready, and that's exactly why you must begin. Readiness does not come before action, it comes from action. Think about every person who changed their life dramatically. They all had one thing in common: they moved before they felt prepared. They stepped into uncertainty. They risked looking foolish. They risked the whispers, the judgments, the doubts. And in doing so, they unlocked a level of courage that most people never taste. You cannot become unrecognizable without risking discomfort. You cannot build power while avoiding exposure. You cannot rise while hiding behind the illusion of preparation. This week, your challenge is to do something that scares you, not recklessly, but intentionally. Something your old self would have avoided because it didn't come with guarantees. Make the call. Start the project. Show up to the gym. Speak up. Take the step that feels bigger than you. You don't need approval, you need movement. Because no one becomes powerful by staying invisible. No one becomes unrecognizable by playing small. This week demands that you step into your own authority, claim your own potential, and act without waiting for permission. That's how transformation begins. The moment you decide your life is yours to shape. There's a powerful truth people rarely talk about: the version of you that feels weak, tired, unfocused. And overwhelmed isn't actually you. It's the version you became by default. It's the result of unmanaged habits, unchallenged thoughts, and unprotected energy. But your strongest, most disciplined, most unstoppable self is already inside you, waiting for conditions that you've never created. And that is what this week is about: creating the conditions where your greatness has no choice but to rise. Most people try to change their life by forcing themselves to feel motivated. They think power comes from hype, from inspiration, from emotion. But the truth is simpler, and far more brutal power comes from environment. You rise in the environment you build. You fall in the one you tolerate. So the question you must ask this week is: what environment are you building around yourself? An environment of clarity or chaos? An environment of distraction or discipline? An environment where your mind grows or where it withers? Because if your environment isn't aligned with your goals don't stand a chance. Look around your life. The clutter in your room is the clutter in your mind. The noise around you becomes the noise within you. The people you talk to shape the limits you believe in. The habits you repeat shape the identity you defend. If you surround yourself with comfort, you will become comfortable. If you surround yourself with challenge, you will become strong. So this week, you must build an environment that forces you to rise. Clean your space. Organize your time. Protect your mornings like they are sacred. Create a physical environment that signals your mind we are no longer living like the old version of ourselves. Then build an internal environment. The environment of mindset. When the old voice says, "You can't," answer it with action. When your fear says, "What if you fail?" respond with, "What if I grow?" When doubt whispers, "You've tried before," reply, "But this time I'm not negotiating." Finally, build a social environment. Distance yourself, even temporarily, from the people who drain your energy or minimize your ambition. You're not abandoning them. You're protecting the transformation that's trying to happen within you. Because the truth is simple: you cannot become unrecognizable while living in the same environment that kept you ordinary. Change the conditions, and you'll reveal a version of yourself you didn't even know existed. This week you rise by design, not by accident. There comes a point in every transformation where your mind begins to fight back. Not because you're doing something wrong, because you're finally doing something right. The moment you decide to rise, your old identity senses it's losing control. And it will try everything to pull you back into comfort. This is the part most people never survive. They quit, not because they're incapable, but because they mistake resistance for a sign to stop, when in reality, resistance is the clearest signal that growth is happening. You have to understand something: your mind loves what is familiar, even if it's destroying you. It loves patterns, habits, repetition, even the ones that limit you. So when you break the cycle, your mind panics. It sends you urges, distractions, cravings, excuses. It whispers, take a break. You've done enough. You can do it tomorrow. These voices are not truth. They are echoes of your past trying to survive your future. This week, you must learn to recognize that voice, and you must refuse to obey it, because every time you choose discipline over impulse, you weaken that old identity. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it, you tighten your grip on your future. Every time you push through discomfort, you prove to yourself that you are no longer controlled by the weaker parts of you. This is where real power is born, not in easy moments, but in the moments when everything inside you screams to stop. Anyone can be strong when life is simple. True strength is built when strength feels unavailable. True confidence is built when doubt is loud. True identity is built when you act against your old self. So let me give you a simple truth for this week. If it feels hard, you're doing it right. If you feel resistance, you're on the correct path. If your mind is fighting you, you're breaking a pattern that needed to break years ago. Instead of avoiding discomfort, lean into it. Embrace it. Let it shape you. Discomfort is not the enemy. It is the sculptor of the version of you that you're trying to meet. Every challenge is carving away the excuses. Every moment of discipline is chiseling out strength. Every hour of consistency is revealing a version of yourself that was buried beneath years of hesitation. You are not becoming someone new. You are uncovering who you always were beneath the noise. And this week, you keep going, especially when it's hard. There is a moment in every transformation when you begin to feel something you haven't felt in a long time: momentum. It starts quietly. Maybe you wake up a little earlier than usual. Maybe you finish a task without negotiating with yourself. Maybe you ignore a distraction that used to control you. These victories seem small, but they're not. They are proof that your identity is shifting. They are signs that the future you've been imagining is finally taking shape inside you. Most people don't understand the power of momentum. They think transformation is about huge leaps, dramatic breakthroughs, or life-shattering moments. But real change doesn't happen in explosions. It happens in accumulation. One strong decision repeated, one disciplined choice repeated, one promise kept repeated. Soon, those small wins stack so high that the weight of your old life no longer stands a chance. Momentum is the most powerful force you will experience this week because it removes the need for motivation. Motivation is emotional. It fades. It fluctuates. It depends on how you feel. But momentum creates its own energy. When you do the right thing today, tomorrow becomes easier. When you show up again, consistency stops being a struggle and becomes part of who you are. This is the point where you begin to become unrecognizable, not because you changed everything overnight, but because you kept showing up when the old you would have quit. That's the moment you separate yourself from the version of you that lived on excuses, distractions, hesitation, and fear. But to protect your momentum, you must avoid the subtle traps that kill it. The trap of just this once. The trap of I've done enough. The trap of I'll restart tomorrow. Momentum doesn't disappear in big failures. It disappears in small compromises. And every compromise is a doorway back to who you used to be. So this week, guard your momentum like it's sacred. When you feel tired, do a little bit more. When you feel distracted, refocus faster. When you start doubting yourself, remind your mind of the progress you already made. You have evidence now, real evidence, that you're changing. Use it. Lean on it. Build on it. Because the moment you realize you're capable of consistency, everything in your life becomes possible. You start believing in yourself, not because someone told you to, but because your actions proved it. And that's when you become dangerous. Not to others, but to every limitation that once defined you. There's a powerful shift that happens when you stop living for who you were and start building for who you are becoming. Suddenly, the things that used to matter don't matter anymore. The opinions that once controlled you lose their grip. The doubts that used to paralyze you become background noise. You begin to feel a quiet strength forming inside you. Not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakably real. It's the strength of someone who finally realizes, I don't need to prove myself to anyone. I only need to honor the future I'm building. This week is not just about discipline or habits or routines. It's about identity. It's about becoming someone who no longer fits inside the old limitations you used to obey. Most people live their entire lives reacting to who they were yesterday. They keep repeating the same failures, the same beliefs, the same emotional patterns. They keep reinforcing an identity that was shaped by fear, by insecurity, by past mistakes. But you are stepping into a different way of being. You're not reacting to the past, you're creating the future. You're not bowing to who you were. You're honoring who you're meant to become. That shift changes everything. Think about it. When you start acting like your future self, the old you has no power left. The future you doesn't negotiate with distractions. The future you doesn't shrink around people who don't understand the vision. The future you doesn't waste time proving anything. The future you moves with purpose, with clarity, with conviction. And every action you take this week is a vote for that identity. So here's your challenge. Act today as if the future version of you is already watching. Make decisions the strong version would make. Speak the way the confident version would speak. Commit the way the disciplined version would commit. Step into the identity before you fully feel ready, because identity is not something you wait for, it's something you embody. The old you will resist. It will tell you that you're pretending. It will say you're faking it. But listen carefully, you're not faking anything. You are practicing. And practice becomes identity. The more you live as your future self, the faster your life begins to align with that vision. You start attracting opportunities the old you wasn't prepared for. You start making decisions the old you was afraid of. You start becoming someone you barely recognize. And that is exactly the point. Because the goal of this week is not improvement, it's transformation. And transformation begins the moment you decide to act like the person you're becoming, not the person you were. There is something remarkable that happens when you commit to becoming unrecognizable. You start seeing the truth about the people around you. Not everyone wants you to grow. Not everyone wants you to rise. Not everyone benefits from your strength. Some people are comfortable with your weakness because it makes them feel stronger. Some are comfortable with your silence because it keeps them louder. And some are comfortable with your old identity because it asks nothing from them. When you change, you disrupt the unspoken agreements you had with others. Agreements based on staying small, staying predictable, staying convenient. And when you break those agreements, some people will distance themselves. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your growth exposes their refusal to grow. Your discipline reveals their excuses. Your rising challenges their comfort. This week, you must accept something most people never learn. Elevation requires separation, not isolation separation. Separation from habits, from mindsets, and sometimes from people who cannot walk with you into the next chapter. You don't need to argue with them. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need their approval. You simply need to rise, even if they choose to remain where they are. Because the truth is, the version of you that is emerging cannot survive in the same environment as the version of you that held you back. Growth demands space. Space to think differently. Space to act differently. Space to outgrow patterns, expectations, and relationships that no longer align with the person you're becoming. But let me tell you this clearly. The right people will not fear your growth. They will fuel it. They will challenge you, not compete with you. They will support your effort, not resent it. They will see your potential, not your limitations. And as you rise, the people meant for your future will rise with you. This week, pay attention. Notice who encourages your discipline. Notice who respects your boundaries. Notice who celebrates your progress, not your comfort. Notice who feels threatened by your strength and who feels inspired by it. These observations will guide you more than any advice ever could. Transformation isn't just about becoming stronger, it's about building a life around that strength. And that means choosing your circle with intention, choosing your influences with clarity, choosing your environment with purpose. Because the person you are becoming is powerful, and that power deserves to be protected. Now comes the final truth you must face. The version of yourself you've been striving to become doesn't require perfection. It requires persistence. It doesn't demand certainty. It demands action. It doesn't ask for comfort. It asks for courage. And the only way to reach that version of yourself is to commit fully and without compromise to the next 7 days. This week is your proving ground. 7 days to disrupt your patterns. 7 days to silence your doubts. 7 days to take control of your identity. 7 days to become a person your old self would never recognize. You've already started. You've observed your habits. You've interrupted your routines. You've reclaimed your authority, created momentum, and built an environment that supports the strongest version of yourself. You've faced resistance, leaned into discomfort, and made choices your old self would avoid. You've seen the people who will rise with you and the ones who will resist your change. And through it all, one truth has emerged. Transformation isn't theoretical. It's tangible. It's real. And it's happening. But here's the secret most people never grasp: the moment you stop being afraid of your own strength, the moment you stop negotiating with excuses, the moment you embrace the discomfort of growth as a sign that you are on the right path, you become unstoppable. You are no longer limited by old beliefs, old fears, or old environments. You are no longer trapped by the identity that once held you back. You are becoming something entirely new, not in a distant future, but starting now, starting today, starting this week. So what does it take to finish strong? It takes consistency when no one is watching. It takes discipline when every fiber of your being wants to quit. It takes courage when fear is screaming louder than ever. It takes focus when distractions are relentless. And it takes the unwavering belief that the person you are becoming is worth every ounce of effort you've invested. Because they are. You are. By the end of these 7 days, the mirror will show someone you barely recognize, stronger, sharper, more disciplined, more unstoppable. People around you will notice. Some will be inspired. Some may be intimidated. And some may simply wonder how it happened so fast. But you'll know. You'll know because you did the work that most people never even begin. You disrupted, you persisted, you overcame, you rose. And that is how ordinary becomes extraordinary. That is how weakness becomes power. That is how you become unrecognizable in just 1 week. So start now. Keep going. Don't stop. This is your transformation, your life, your identity. Own it.